Hello, this is Jamie Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of Libertarian Censored Podcast, going over all the posts in Libertarian Censored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have Russia to make supporting the quote-unquote childless lifestyle illegal from NBCNews.com by Baton 13. And yeah, I definitely would say that's overly authoritarian. I personally think people should have kids if they feel like it, but no one should be forced to have kids if they don't want to, and that's my thoughts on that issue. And we have, should Ukraine be invited to join NATO now from Lemon Limelight? And they said, The Economist assesses the situation in Ukraine. The war is going badly. Ukraine and its allies must change course. The emphasis added and recommends, in part, an invitation to join NATO. And they share some paragraphs from that article. And then they ask the question, do you think Ukraine should be invited to join NATO? And I personally think no, not currently, since they're currently in active war zone. And personally, I would rather just get rid of all military alliances like NATO in the first place, because they're inherently forced collectivism. And I think that's the big problem in our society today, is forced collectivism. I think that's, you could argue, the only problem in our society is forced collectivism, because when people are forced to collectivize, they don't have a choice in the matter, and that's pretty much what NATO is. No one in the country chooses to be a member of NATO or not. It's on the governmental level that they are entangled with each other, and I don't personally care for that. I know a lot of Americans and probably people in other countries in NATO who don't care for that either, and that's why I personally think it's best to do away with it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have this subreddit's belief about how crappy the Republican Party is completely justified, but this belief by many subscribers that the Democratic Party can do no wrong is very misguided, from Plasman 30, and they added, if I had to pick between the two major parties, I'd be forced to pick Democrats in 2024, but if I had to pick between all the parties in the U.S., I'd pick Liberal Party USA over any other party. Feel free to call out the Republicans for the shit they're pulling, but don't get all butthurt if someone calls out a Democratic politician and criticizes the Democratic Party. And I'd agree with that. People will always justify the authoritarianism of the one major party if they say, oh, but it's better than the other major party. That's just low standards, I would say. You have to hold both parties accountable for their authoritarian actions. Otherwise, you're not a libertarian, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better from Medium.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, that was the World Economic Forum that posted that. So I personally think if people want to own nothing, have no privacy, and think life's the best, I think they should be able to. But I don't think the World Economic Forum should be forcing people to do that. It's like they say, they're pushing people to eat bugs, live in the pod, own nothing, be happy. And I personally think the libertarian position is, don't tell me what to do. And I recently did see John Kerry speaking up, I think, one of their events, and he said, "Oh, the big problem with the First Amendment is it's a weapon. It allows misinformation to spread. Increasingly that's the problem. They view our rights as privileges, and they want to take them away as soon as possible. And I don't think that's very libertarian. We need to support for people's freedom to do whatever they want to, and that's not what the WEF globalists think." And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have young men or women are moving in the opposite directions from Axios.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I hear a lot of young men are getting more conservative, a lot of young women are getting more liberal, and I think that's very much, what the parties are offering right now. The left pretty much has nothing to offer young white men like me, because they're all like abortion and all that. Men can't really get abortion, so I guess the woke would say transgender men can, but other than that, the thing is, increasingly there's nothing to offer, so that's why I think a lot of young men are going to the right. And especially for all the woke stuff going on soon, I think the woke might even, it seems like the woke are heading in the direction of making things like, making it illegal to be a white man or a religious. That seems like that's the direction that they're headed. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have expectations when being in public from Plasman 30, and they said, on my own private property I can do whatever I want as long as my actions don't violate the NAP. I think every libertarian can agree to that. What about when you're in public? I make a conscious decision in public to act the way other people would expect me to act. A few days ago I ran something to think about. As I'm driving around, I pull up alongside a pickup truck, and the guy uses the tape right down on the side of the truck in huge letters, fuck Joe Biden. And I'm sitting there thinking some 5-year-old kid is going to read that and repeat it at school the next day. That parent is going to get a note home about and how their 5-year-old has added the word fuck to their vocabulary, probably totally against their parents' wishes. I've seen fuck Putin bumper stickers and they annoy me just as much for similar reasons. Though I can't control the actions of said random individual, what do you think the libertarian stance on this is? When you're in public, should you minimize your chance of offending someone and stay in the lanes of what you would be considered polite society, or are you free to do as you please and it's up to said individual to avoid you even though they might be not aware of your actions until it's too late for them to do anything about it? Personally, I've made a conscious effort to avoid cursing in general because I've seen those people not land jobs because they drop an F-bomb in the middle of job interviews because that word has just become a part of their vocabulary and they can't help themselves. I've never wanted that to happen to me. And I personally think, people will justify whatever they want to justify. If people want to act like a scumbag in public, I personally wouldn't act like that. But as long as they're not hurting anyone else, I think it's the libertarian position is let people act how they want to. With that being said, I do think we should stigmatize stuff like, public masturbation and public sex and all that because I do think societal standards do have to be upheld to some extent, but with that being said, I don't think they should be upheld using the force of the state, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump makes call for police to use extraordinarily rough tactics to stop crime. You need one really violent day from MeIte.com by CH4Locks. And yeah, I personally don't think that's rhetoric is very libertarian, especially when, the woke people might want to use the police for the police force of the state against people like Donald Trump, and that he needs to really consider that. The Republican positions, we stand by our police. Well, the Republican position should be, the state is corrupt and state violence is never justified, even if it seems like it is. And that's my thought on that issue. Then we have UBI works at making Americans poorer from Incruente, and that's a YouTube video from Pete Judo. And yeah, I personally used to be more on the pro UBI side, but I still think if people if people want to fund UBI for voluntary taxation, that'd probably be one of the top programs I would fund. But with that being said, it's important to remember that, it could contribute to things like inflation, just printing more money. And I don't think that would be very libertarian. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Israel planning a limited ground operation in Lebanon that could start imminently, U.S. official says from WashingtonPost.com by Frosty Slawman. And I definitely would agree that's not good. Countries shouldn't be invading other countries, even if groups like Hezbollah are located in them. And that's my thoughts there. And I definitely do think, you increasingly see this push for Israel and Iran to go to war. And I definitely don't think that would be very libertarian either. And I definitely hope the U.S. would stay out of it. But, Israel's practically the 51st state at this point. So I don't really have too much hope there. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Harris says she backs legalizing marijuana, going further than Biden from thehill.com by Patan 13. And yeah, I personally think this is just a carrot on the stick she's using to get people to vote for her. And I don't think she has any plans to legalize it if she does get elected. But yeah, say whatever you want to, I guess. And that's my thoughts there. Then we have U.S. plans to revive reactors as AI powers nuclear renaissance from Axios.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I definitely do think nuclear is very good when it comes to green energy production. With that being said, a lot of people are against it because, they don't want clean energy. They want to completely remake society, and that's why they like to push climate change so much. They say, and when you say, nuclear can be used against climate as an energy source that doesn't contribute to climate change, they say, no, I don't. It's not that. That might explode, and it's not that I want. And they're pretty much they're saying that they don't care about the climate change. They care about ruling society how they see fit, and that's my thoughts there. Then we have Montana man gets 6 months in prison for cloning giant sheep and breeding it from APnews.com by Tom Q Masters, and that's crosswords from the Singularity subreddit. And yeah, I think, if it was his sheep, I think he should be able to do whatever he wants with it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. I think that's the libertarian position, even if you are for or against cloning. Then we have Trump falsely says Georgia's governor was unable to talk to Biden about storm damage from NBCNews.com by Ragnar OKXG. And yeah, I think if he wants to say that, I think he should be able to. If it's a lie, politicians lie all the time, yet people only seem to care about when the politician says it when they have the wrong letter next to their name. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Iran launches ballistic missile attack on Israel from ground news by Doctor Who 07. And yeah, it always seems like they're about to go to war, but it's these days, it always seems like nothing ever comes of it. Nothing ever really happens. We just keep taking it day by day, and that's my thoughts there. And we have Tennessee plastics factory staff killed in Hurricane Helen, reportedly told not to evacuate from TheGuardian.com by CH4 Locks. And yeah, that's why you can't always listen to what a corporation tells you to do, even if you're working for them. It might not be as bad as government authoritarianism, but I think corporate authoritarianism is definitely still a problem, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have an out-of-warranty battery almost left this paralyzed man's exoskeleton useless from TheVerge.com by CH4 Locks, and that's crossed from the Tech News subreddit. And yeah, that's why I think, you can't have people copywriting things like exoskeletons and cell and proteins and cells and all that, because they could use that to be overly authoritarian, kind of like Monsanto does when it comes to, or did when it came to copywriting DNA patterns, so they could copyright some kinds of seeds, and then they could sue farmers if they grew those seeds even accidentally. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump vows to prosecute Google for surfacing only bad stories about him from IBTimes.com by Swamp Yankee Dan. And yeah, I definitely do think Google is biased against Trump. I do think it has a right to be biased against Trump. And that's my thoughts on that issue. We need to support people's freedom to do whatever they want, as long as it's not overly authoritarian. If it's overly authoritarianism when it comes to corporation, I think the people should hold it accountable rather than the state. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have VP debate thread from Donald Key, and I didn't watch the debate last night, so if I wanted to watch two knuckleheads jack each other, jerk themselves off, I'd watch porn. So that's my thoughts there. Then we have we're all voting for Chase, right? From Groovy Groovster, and they said who's voting their heart and who's gonna pussy out. And I personally voted for the Democrats the last two times, so I'll probably go for Chase this time. I don't really care for either candidate, but I'm tired of the Trump circle jerk. But I just want to get the second term is over with so it can finally end. But regardless, I think the Trump circle jerk's going to continue as long as he's still alive, and probably will continue after he's dead as well. It's kind of like the Ronald Reagan circle jerk does. And that's my thoughts on that issue. We have Jill Stein. Iran is attacking Tel Aviv after Israel attacks Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iran to expand its genocidal war on Gaza. Biden can stop this war with one called Israel demanding an immediate ceasefire negotiations. Netanyahu is dragging us into World War III, but we do not consent. And that's from Jill Stein on Twitter, across from the Green Party subreddit. And I would agree with that. We need to hold Israel accountable for its authoritarian policy when it comes to the Palestinians. And I don't care that all their Arab neighbors, Arab and Islamic neighbors don't like them. Just because your neighbors don't like you isn't an excuse to oppress people. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Truth is Treason from CH4 Locks, and that's crossword from the Political Humor subreddit. And it's the moderator from last night's debate. Just to clarify, Springfield station migrants have legal status, and JD Vance says the rules were you guys weren't going to fact check. And yeah, I do think that's going to make him look bad if he says that, but I would have tried to put fact check in quotation marks, going and saying, your fact checks aren't always facts. You never fact check the other guy, but people are just going to run with that. He's bad because he's in the out group, and that's my thoughts there. Then we have woman spent a month in jail because police mistook dry SpaghettiOs residue on a spoon for meth before crime lab test finally realized error from SlaterReport.com by CH4 Locks. And yeah, it just goes to show you that the people in positions of authority can arrest you for whatever reasons they want to, even if it's just for having dried SpaghettiOs residue on a spoon. Then we have damning non-answer. Vance refuses to acknowledge Trump lost the 2020 election from NBCNews.com by Donald Key. And yeah, I personally would acknowledge the results of the election, even if he believes it's rigged. But with that being said, the Democrats had Russia, Russia, Russia in 2016, and it looks like they might say, well, Russia rigged the election again this year if they lose. So it's really a both sides issue, even if the media won't present it that way. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.